Okay, I guess we're ready to get started. Good evening. I'm Amy Lecocq, and I'd like to welcome you to the very first Township Future Zoom meetup. At first, we were disappointed that we would not be able to meet face-to-face because that seems more personal and frankly more neighborly and really more in line with our group. But even though we're doing it digitally, I'm actually seated at my kitchen counter. You can see. So you're all invited to my kitchen to sit down for a chat, and that's about as neighborly as it gets these days. The only downside is you'll have to provide your own food and drink, and maybe that too is an upside. So just FYI, all of the attendees will be muted during the presentation, and also the video for all the attendees will be turned off during the presentation. We expect all to go well, but if there are any glitches, please be patient with us. Thanks. Okay, just as we start, a little bit about me. I'm currently the president of the Township Future Steering Committee. My family moved to the Woodlands in 1994, back when there was still a wooden sign on Grogan's Mill Road showing the population change. My husband Rick and I raised two boys here, and long ago my mom also moved to the Woodlands to be with her grandsons. Professionally, I spent the bulk of my career as a federal prosecutor, and since retiring, I volunteered in many capacities, including as president of the Indian Springs Village Association, president of the Woodlands Arts Council, as founder and chair of Signatures, the annual community author series, and many other roles with my boys' school and activities. Hopefully there will be an opportunity to meet face-to-face at some point, but we're all too aware of the necessity of virtual meetings right now. So we thank you for joining us digitally. Tonight, we're so very pleased to see so many Woodlands residents who truly care about this community. Over 60 residents have registered to join us tonight, and I have to say, that greatly exceeded our expectations when we decided to hold this virtual meeting. Many of you have lived in the Woodlands for a number of years, but whether you're an old timer and have seen us go from mostly undeveloped land to a single homeowners association, to a cluster of homeowners associations, to a township, or someone who has recently relocated to the Woodlands, we all recognize the features of the Woodlands that make it one of the very best places to live in the United States today. We're all here because we choose to be here. Township Future was formed to make sure that we're able to maintain those features that make the Woodlands the place that people and businesses choose for their home. Many of these features were established by our founder, George Mitchell, but others have been developed over time as we've grown and matured. Many of you, I know, have contributed directly and indirectly to the success of the Woodlands. And we thank you for your many contributions to the community and also for your interest and support of Township Future. You know, we have so many nonprofits, businesses, and faith-based groups that contribute to the success of the Woodlands, but we have not had a PAC that is specifically dedicated to our three guiding principles for governance in the Woodlands. We often say that the only thing better than our past is our future, and our aim is to work together to make sure that that's the case. The three guiding principles for governance in the Woodlands are, and Kira, can you put that up for us? Number one, to keep taxes low, the lowest possible while still maintaining our existing level of services. Two, limited government. Our local government works best when it's nimble in order to respond to issues as they arise. And we do not want bloated bureaucracy or a one-size-fits-all type of local government for the Woodlands. And third, we respect the township's history and character in caring and coming together for all residents. This was reflected in creation of interfaith and is carried through to this day. So over the years, there have been many informal discussions, probably you've participated in some of them, about forming a PAC to promote these kind of values. But until this year, no one has taken the steps to actually initiate forming a PAC. Our steering committee adopted these values on behalf of Township Future and set their course to educate and advocate on key issues and to support and endorse good candidates for the Woodlands Township Board of Directors and other non-partisan elected offices that affect the residents and the businesses of the Woodlands. In this, our first year, we're focusing on the township, but we may also focus on the school districts and MUDs if the needs arise. As I mentioned, we will only participate in elections for nonpartisan offices. It might be worthwhile to talk for just a minute about what this means. It means that we will only participate in elections when the candidates are not required to run in a party primary or to declare their party affiliation in order to run for office. That's why we do not refer to ourselves as bipartisan, which would mean that we include members of both political parties. Parties are irrelevant to these offices. Since we are focused on only nonpartisan offices and only on issues affecting the Woodlands parties are irrelevant to our organization. Nonpartisan elections are decidedly local, like municipal type elections, school board elections, MUDs, or groundwater conservation districts. These entities preside over uniquely local functions that favor community over politics. Thus, none of our candidates will run associated with a political party, and our candidates and our organization is nonpartisan or community focused. So this is a concept that's not currently in play outside of our group. We fully understand that we are trying a different approach. The other PACs in the area are tied to one political party or another. Since we are nonpartisan, we are not competing with or challenging any of the existing PACs. In fact, to the contrary, we want to work alongside any PAC, organization, or individual who shares these three principles for governing. And again, lowest taxes possible to maintain our level of services, a nimble, streamlined government structure, and a welcoming and respectful stance toward all residents in the Woodlands. So just to emphasize, Woodlands Future will not play any active role in partisan elections. Partisan elections are all of the other elections, those where candidates run in a primary and then the party's chosen candidate in the general election, like county offices, state offices, national offices. These days, those races tend to involve some people who can be quite political or motivated by political aspirations. Until recently, the nonpartisan races have been less political and more community focused. Township Future will focus exclusively on these local, community-focused, nonpartisan issues and elections that affect the Woodlands residents and businesses. For this reason, individuals associated with our PAC may support candidates or advocate for issues beyond the scope of our mission as individuals, but never as Township Future. They are obviously free to support any candidates they wish to in other elections, as this is not something that is covered in our charter. As an organization, our focus remains steadfastly on the Woodlands only. So, like I said, this is a unique concept in our area, and we appreciate you tuning in to find out more about us, to support us, or to evaluate a run for the director's position. We have put a good deal of thought into how to approach this, and there were a number of factors and decision points that have led us to this model. Luckily and thankfully, I'm taking this journey with some pretty outstanding folks. Among our 5 steering committee members, we have 3 hometown heroes, 2 moms, 3 dads, 2 grandpas, 1 engineer, 1 communications professional, and 3 lawyers. Sorry about the attorneys, but maybe I shouldn't have said that part. Between us, over 100 years of residency in the Woodlands, spanning from 7 years to 30 years. We've been involved in dozens of local community groups, and we live in 4 different villages, including Creekside Park in Harris County. We are a dedicated, professional, diverse, and community-minded group. We are both serious in our purpose and fun-loving in its execution. We are all motivated to take these steps because of our love for the Woodlands. Now I'm proud to introduce you to the other members of the steering committee. You see them on your screen. Walter Cook is our vice president. Wave, Walter. There you go. And treasurer. Kira Becker is our secretary. Rob Johnson and Bob Lilac round out our committee. Other Township Future committees include an advisory committee, a candidate vetting committee, and a candidate support committee. If we are able to meet face-to-face in the future, we will also have a functioning events committee. At this point, I'd like to let the other members of the steering committee chat with you briefly about various activities and aspects of our organization. First up is Rob Johnson. I'd like to introduce you to Rob to speak to our educational and advocacy programs. Just a bit about Rob. He and his wife, Christine, have lived in the Woodlands since 1996 and raised their 2 sons here. Rob is an active community volunteer serving on the boards of Interfaith of the Woodlands, where he is a former chair of that board, and currently serves as chair of the board of the Interfaith Community Clinic. That's the health clinic. He retired in 2018 as Assistant General Counsel of ExxonMobil Corporation and continues to be an active pro bono volunteer for several local organizations. Rob, go ahead and unmute. And there you go.
Amy, I think Rob dropped off for some reason.
Okay.
He's gone. Maybe he'll come back.
Okay. Let's turn to you then, Walter. Let me introduce Walter Cook, our treasurer. Walter Cook is going to talk a little bit about his experience as a candidate last year. He's a practicing attorney who lives and works in the Woodlands. In his over 30 years in the Woodlands, Walter's actively participated in many community ventures. In 2005, he served on the board of the Woodlands Community Association, which was the first homeowners association. And in November 2019, he was candidate for the Township Director. Walter is a hometown hero and has served on multiple nonprofit boards. He currently serves as president of the Madeline Cook Foundation, which provides staff development to teachers and supports underprivileged students in Montgomery County. Walter?
Thank you, Amy, and welcome everybody to the Zoom webinar. I can't even say the word correctly. I've been assigned the task of talking about actually running a campaign based on my experience running for the Township Board last November, and then also discuss what the Township Future intends to do to help its endorsed candidates out to relieve some of the stress and worry and strain of actually running a campaign. So let's start on the lessons I learned from my campaign. I've entitled it Cook's Top 10 Campaign Lessons Learned. Now, when we get to the end of this presentation on lessons learned, you'll probably think campaigning sounds like pure drudgery and pain. Now, there's no denying that campaigning is hard work, but do not despair. When I get to the part of the presentation where I'm talking about Township Future, I'll be able to explain to you how we hope to benefit our endorsed candidates with support, monetary, volunteer support. All right, let's go through my top 10 lessons learned. First, running for the township or any elective office is hard physical work, block walking, working the polls on election day, putting up signs, going to forums, eating endless rubber chicken dinners. You really have to be committed heart and soul to get through a campaign. Second, and unfortunately, political campaigns are expensive. Now, back in the day when we had campaigns for directorship of the homeowners associations, money wasn't quite the problem it is today, but those days are over with. We're into big city, big town politics. I spent about $16,000 on my race for township board, and my opponent, the one who won, loaned her campaign upwards of $40,000. So you can see we're talking about big money. And it's unfortunate, but consultants, bumper stickers, yard signs, websites, other social media platforms are just expensive. And the third lesson learned is you've got to spend campaign money wisely. You've got to spend it on things that attract and keep volunteers and voters. And one problem is, you know, the hot item last November may not be the hot item this November. So it's a constant struggle to really figure out how to spend your money. Also, avoid vanity projects. I hired a professional videographer, and he took all these videos of me explaining all my long-winded policy proposals and dressed them all up. And man, I was impressed. I looked like the cat's pajamas. The problem was nobody else was interested in these videos except me. So spend your money on things that attract voters and not on items that simply boost your ego. The fourth lesson learned is the candidate has got to have a base of support. It could be a church, a Rotary Club, another service club, a team, could be Township Future. But it's really advantageous to start campaigning with a base of existing support. Now, you can't take your base for granted. Just because you belong to a service club doesn't mean that all the other members are going to stand up and salute and vote for you. You've got to engage that club and do the same activities you do for total strangers. But I can guarantee you it's a whole lot easier asking for money and volunteers from a friend than it is from a total stranger at some meeting that you really don't want to be attending to begin with. The fifth item is a campaign manager. You really have to have a campaign manager. A campaign involves the big items, you know, the speeches, the forms, voter engagement, but it also involves a lot of nitty-gritty detail work, like where can I get the signs for the best price, and you know, what social media platform should I be on? You really need a campaign manager who can offload those types of decisions from the candidate. But of course, the candidate's got to trust that campaign manager, and that campaign manager has got to show up on time and do what he or she's supposed to do. But the candidate has to be primarily involved in voter engagement. It's really a waste of time for the candidate to get down and involved in all these nitty-gritty things. Now, he ought to sign off on what's on the yard sign, but deciding which vendor can be offloaded to a competent campaign manager. The sixth item is really the most important. To be a successful candidate, you've got to be good at cold calling. You've got to have the ability to work a room. And by that, I mean, you've got to be able to go into that room full of strangers, go up, introduce yourself, and in the space of a minute or two, try to convert that stranger into a voter and a supporter. You can have the slickest ads, the best policy proposal, and the coolest website. But if you don't have that ability to make cold calls, you're really going to be handicapped in a campaign. Doesn't mean you'll lose, but it means if your opponent has got that skill set, you're in for a real tough fight. So if you haven't got it, but work on it, get it. It's not something that you're necessarily born with. It's something that you have to acquire by simply doing that cold calling. Another item, number 7, is you don't need a long list of policy proposals. Nobody pays a bit of attention to those. Get you a good, snappy slogan that'll fit on a bumper sticker. That'll do a whole lot better than endless proposals on this, that, and the other. The 8th lesson learned is do your homework. Attend township board meetings. Talk to the township staff, ask questions. Where does the money come from? Where does it go? What are the hot issues everybody's talking about? Read the township enabling legislation. It's I was going to say a bunch of lawyerly gobbledygook, but that's not really right. It's difficult, it's dense, but unless you understand that, the legislation, or at least have a working knowledge of what's in it, you're going to be handicapped, because that's the legislation that created the township and gives it its powers. And it's very important to understand that document. The number 9 item is you really need a robust social media presence. A website and a Facebook page are the minimum requirements. And I know there are a whole bunch of other social media platforms I've never heard of. But that's where it seems all the action is, or much of the action is, in campaigning these days. And in addition to the platform, you've got to have a social media manager who understands how to make those platforms pop and constantly renew content. We've all had the experience of, getting online and going to a website we visited a month ago, and it's the same stuff. All you do is click out and go on. You've got to constantly renew the content on this social media platform, and you need an expert to help you do that. Okay, the last lesson learned is that township politics is currently dominated by a well-oiled political machine. They are good. They know how to get their voters out. They know how to support their candidates. Now, that doesn't mean that if you run and you're not endorsed by the machine, you're going to be defeated. It'll be doom and gloom right up to the election day. But it does mean that an independent candidate is going to have to work hard and is going to have to work smart. And Township Future here is here to help these independent candidates, those that we endorse, achieve victory at the polls. And one more tip. Please be courteous to your opponent and your opponent's campaign workers. Nothing's gained by yelling and screaming. And, during the election last November, we had the great sign war where, people were moving signs and sticking them in front of other people's signs. It was the silliest thing I'd ever saw, but people got so worked up over that. Just don't do that. And if you're attacked unfairly, stifle your gut instinct to go attack back. Sit down, be calm, bide your time until you have a good response, if a response is even appropriate. Now, just because campaigning is hard work doesn't mean campaigning is necessarily dull and boring. You will certainly be faced with all kinds of challenges and problems virtually every day to master and overcome. And you do meet a whole lot of interesting people that have interesting things to say. You may not want to hear what some of them say, but they are certainly interesting. And of course, when your candidate wins, the rigors of the campaign will fade away and the fun will really begin when your candidate is sworn in as a director on the township board. All right, so we've talked about lessons learned. Now, where does the Township Future fit into elections for the township board? As Amy explained, Township Future is going to vet and endorse candidates. And it's important now to tell you what Township Future's criteria are for selecting candidates to endorse. When we got this thing going, we created a written document. You don't have to have a written document to form a PAC, but we felt it was important. A document where we put down our goals and ambitions, and we all signed it. And it's there to constantly remind us. We're going to try to avoid mission creep and stick to what we intended to do when we formed this organization. One top item is we said we would, through Township Future, encourage, recruit, and support candidates for elections to nonpartisan offices affecting the Woodlands. And we set out 3 criteria, 3 things we wanted to see in a candidate. 1, a demonstrated commitment to the Woodlands. 2, a basic understanding of the history and governance of the Woodlands. And 3, and most importantly, the ability to make decisions based on relevant facts in the best interest of the Woodlands and the residents of the Woodlands. That's it. There's no requirement that you belong to an in-group or a party of some type. There's no requirement that you adhere to certain beliefs. We're looking for people who've demonstrated their commitment to the Woodlands, who have at least a basic understanding of what the Woodlands is all about, and has that ability when faced with a decision to look at the facts and make a reasoned decision based on the facts before you in the best interest of the Woodlands. Now, our vetting committee has been hard at work coming up with an initial questionnaire for candidates to complete. Kira, our social media maven, who will be speaking with you shortly, has put it up on the website, and you can go there and fill it out. Now, completing the questionnaire doesn't commit you to do anything. You can always withdraw from the vetting process at any time. The next step will be setting up interviews of candidates. The vetting committee will go through the completed questionnaire and invite those that have submitted the questionnaire to come in for an interview. And this will give the members of the committee an opportunity to learn more about the candidate, and will also give the candidate a chance to ask questions and find out what Township Future can offer the candidate if endorsed. Then when the vetting process is complete, all the interviews are conducted, the vetting committee will make recommendations to our steering committee, who is going to select the candidates Township Future will endorse. Now, of course, we're only going to endorse one candidate in each race. We're not going to endorse more than one. So we'll have our list of endorsed candidates. So, I mean, what good is that to the candidate? Well, we intend to put together a package of campaign benefits to offer our endorsed candidates, designed to make the campaign a bit less stressful and more effective. Now, these are totally voluntary. The endorsed candidate can say, I know it all, no thanks, see you at the polls, and that's fine. But if the candidate wants the help, we're going to be there to give it to them. Now, we're not going to run anybody's campaign. The candidate will run his or her own campaign, but we're going to be there ready to provide help. All right, what kind of help? Well, we can introduce you, the candidate, to vendors who we know are good and effective and reasonably priced to provide all the campaign paraphernalia, the signs, the door hangers, the website, other social media platforms. We can introduce the candidate to people who are skilled at managing social media. So the candidate will have an easy entree into those people that would be, might be good to hire on as a social media manager. We can give you help in figuring out the best use of campaign funds. We'll certainly help raise money for you. Another thing is we're going to provide boots on the ground, volunteers to work the polls, hand out campaign material, and help in all other aspects of the campaign. We'll publicize our endorsed candidates on the Township Future website and Facebook page and in our emails. And we'll assist the endorsed candidates to make sure all those pesky campaign finance reports are timely prepared and filed with the township. Bob, one of our next speakers, is going to give you an overview of all these filing deadlines. And we're happy to serve as a general sounding board for questions, concerns, ideas, or anything else the candidate wants to talk about. So the bottom line is Township Future intends to go to the extra mile for its endorsed candidates, so that our endorsed candidates become winning candidates and ultimately directors of the Woodlands Township. That's our goal, and we're going to stick to it. So thank you for your time and attention. Amy, who's up next?
Me, just for a second. Thanks, Walter. Appreciate you sharing your experiences with us, because you have had firsthand experience with that. Next up is Bob Lilac. We'll talk about some of the upcoming deadlines. Bob is a longtime resident of Grogan's Mill, who served on the Grogan's Mill Village Association, the Grogan's Mill RDRC, Mud Number 1, and as trustee of the Woodlands Water Agency. Bob is an active participant in his church, and he's treasurer for his prison ministry group, Jubilee Prison Ministry, as well as a faithful participant in that program. Bob? Bob, you need to unmute.
There we go. Thank you, Amy. You've heard from Amy about the purpose of the Woodlands Future, and we don't know what happened to one of our other speakers, Rob, but he was going to talk about the many issues concerning the present township governance, and hopefully he'll find a way to get on. And you've just heard from Walter about his experience running against the wind of powerful packs, which Walt Liszczewski and I also experienced. Our mutual experiences and the observations of others is the motivation behind the creation of the Woodlands Future. We want to see those with real desire and credentials to step forward to run for a township director position. We are focused on supporting nonpartisan candidates who have a love, capacity, experience, and capability to serve its residents. My small role with the Woodlands Future is to provide support behind the scenes to the candidates we endorse in the mundane details of administration that must occur behind the campaign effort. In the simplest of terms, the 4 principal steps of running for a township director are, well, number 1, you have to file for office. In this coming November, there are 4 positions, 1, 2, 3, 4, open, and each is for a 2-year term. The time to apply begins on July 18 and ends on August 17. Application packets and all the information you need to know are available at the township office building. The second thing you need to do is to consult the Secretary of State's Election Division website for useful and essential information. And all these details will be available on our website. Kara, are you able to put that up on the screen? And if not, it'll be available. We'll make it available on our website. And then, of course, there are the admin details. You want to start by opening a checking account in the name of the campaign to be able to separately account for each individual expense and each individual donation. And there may also be in-kind donations that you have to account for. You'll need a tool or a methodology to receive donations. Just don't count on checks from the mail, but perhaps you need the ability to accept credit cards or go through a PayPal account. And certainly a website and a Facebook page is essential to accomplishing item B, the second item, and also to give people a mechanism to communicate with you and for you to share issues and more about yourself. And then the peskiest of all is the formal paperwork. And again, these are highly detailed in regulations and rules that are only written by lawyers and probably only fully understood by them. But the filing requirements and deadlines established by the Ethics Commission and the Secretary of State must be followed, and we're here to help you with all of those. And then finally, all filings must be delivered to the township on or before the due date. I mean, it was my experience and those of others that if you missed the deadline by just a few minutes, people would pounce on you for failing to fulfill your obligatory requirements. So that's critical that you get them in on time. The Woodlands Future will actively support the candidates it endorses with the help on all of the requirements needed to run a successful campaign. and you've heard much of that in the 40 minutes that we've been at it. Again, as I said earlier, further information is available on the Woodlands Future website, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at township.future. So very briefly, that's my contribution to tonight. Amy, back to you.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate that. This is the topics that Bob discussed are other areas where Township Future can be helpful to candidates, particularly first-time candidates. We're going to go next to Kira, and then we'll swing back to Rob since we skipped over him earlier. Is that all right with everybody? Thumbs up? Okay, good.
Here.
Kira, let me just, Kira is actually responsible for the beautiful Township Future logo and website, which she will share with you, I believe, in just a minute. We're fortunate to have Kira on our steering committee. Professionally, she leads corporate communications. She is lead corporate communication for a unit of a global technology company. She and her husband, John, and their 2 children live in Creekside Park, and she's been active in mobilizing her village in response to flooding and development issues affecting residents. Her children attend Creekside Forest Elementary School, where she's an active mom. So Kira?
Hi, everyone. Going to share my screen here. There we go. So as Amy said, I'm helping with marketing and growing our bubble in campaigns and anything politics related. It's really important to be able to get a message out into the world. And our message that we want to get out into the world is that our community is best, it's at its strongest when we're working together. And so we've put a couple of tools in place because we know that a lot of people are curious about who we are, what we stand for. We have our website up and running now at townshipfuture.org. You can visit and read a little bit about us, both about our mission and what type of organization we are. And you can read about our steering committee members' backgrounds in the community. And then we talk a little bit about our vision for the community. And Amy did such a great job highlighting our top 3 priorities, which is really the message that we're going to start pushing out more and more and more. And then most importantly, in my opinion, is our advocacy work. And if you go to our website, in the top menu, you'll see our advocacy. And we've been making regular posts when we speak at the Woodlands Township Board meetings. If there's an issue of importance or a recommendation that we'd like to make to the board, we will always post it to our advocacy section for full transparency on what we've been working on and what we believe will help move our township forward in the best way possible. So I'd encourage everybody to go out there and check it out. If you are not already on our email list, you can also join our email list or even donate via our website. So it's a wealth of information. We're really looking to all of you to help spread our message, and so educating yourself on where we stand, what we're doing in the community is always helpful for doing that. So you've got a resource there. The other thing that we have up and running is our social media. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's interesting. The Woodlands is really a Facebook community right now. but there's a growing population on Twitter and Instagram, especially younger users. And it's important that we're engaging everybody. So we're working across all 3 platforms. You can follow us at TownshipFuture on all 3 platforms. And the types of messages that we're going to be putting out are calling for community unity, and highlighting our advocacy work. And when we support something that the board has done, like recently, we've been tweeting about our support for the Woodlands Township Diversity Proclamation, because we feel that it's extremely important to our community, that our board shows that it and the rest of the residents in the community are respectful of everyone who lives here in the Woodlands. And so we stand with Director Ann Snyder on that. So if we can ask for your help sharing these posts on social media, that is a huge help to us. And it is so simple to click like, to share, to even add your voice, respond to our posts, participate in the conversation. The more that we can spread this into a community conversation, the better suited we are to help support our candidates when we're going into the campaign season for this November. So thank you all for being on this evening, and I hope to see you online sometime soon.
Thanks, Kira. Yeah, thank you. Let's go back to Rob. Kira mentioned our advocacy, and that coincidentally is exactly what Rob's going to talk about.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Sorry, folks, I dropped off for a while there, but I think that's a good lesson, you know, because there's been a real exchange of texts. And so when curveballs come up, you've got to be persistent. You've got to rely on your team, and that's how you get through things. I'm actually currently on the East Coast, so things are a little getting dark here. So I apologize for that I look a little bit darker. Let's talk a bit about advocacy. In addition to our mission of identifying strong, nonpartisan candidates for township offices, we're committed to providing information to residents of the Woodlands that they need to stay engaged and informed on important local issues. We've all got a stake in that. We have and will continue to advocate for residents on important issues, and we would love to have those of you who might be interested in our advocacy and education work to reach out to us. Perhaps you're not necessarily interested in running for a township board seat, but you might be interested in working on some of the advocacy things that we do, and we'd love to talk to you more about that. A recent example of our advocacy is with regard to the recent controversy over the township's undemocratic and non-transparent appointment of a director to replace township board member Brian Boniface when he resigned. I encourage you to go to our advocacy on our website to learn more about this issue in detail. But in summary, Township Future were the ones who realized that the board had not complied with the law in accepting Director Boniface's resignation, nor in appointing his replacement. The appointment was completely lacking in transparency and public input, and it was obvious that there had been no opportunity to vet the replacement's qualifications before his appointment. And it's important to keep in mind why this matters. As we all know, directors are elected officials. They work for us. Therefore, even though the township's government legislation provides the township with the authority to appoint a director when a sitting director is no longer able or willing to serve, there needs to be a process that provides for due process, transparency, and public input. It's vital that residents have a voice in who the replacement will be. Fundamental principles of good governance and fairness demand nothing less, and the manner in which the board handled this particular replacement was lacking in every one of those aspects. For example, there was no meaningful opportunity for residents to nominate candidates to replace Director Boniface. Second, there was no time for residents to have an opportunity to hear from the candidates who were nominated by the township board members as replacements, why they wanted to serve, and what their record of service to our community had been. In this case, 3 candidates were nominated. 2 had long and distinguished records of service to the community. One of them was in fact a past and well-respected past member of the township board. All of the candidates should have had an opportunity to discuss with residents why they were the most qualified to serve. And residents should have had an opportunity to hear that, and that didn't happen. So what did we do? We pointed out the flaws in the process. We argued that in order to ensure fairness and due process and give residents confidence that future replacements would be handled in an open and transparent manner, the board should adopt a written policy for replacements. We even provided the board with such a policy, which you can find on our website. And our policy provided for public input, resident comment, and an opportunity for candidates to discuss with voters why they felt they should be selected. To date, the board has chosen not to adopt a policy. Now, I suppose some might say, well, all you've demonstrated, Rob, is that your advocacy wasn't successful. However, I beg to differ. I think we succeeded in getting the board's attention. At least 2 of the directors agreed that a policy should be adopted. And now the board leadership knows that we are watching, that we will do the work, and that we will stand up for transparency and good governance. We'll continue our education and advocacy efforts on issues such as incorporation, taxes, and continuing to ensure transparency in government and supporting, respecting, and caring for all residents of the Woodlands. We'll always be respectful and professional, but we'll be very clear where we stand. You can learn more about these efforts on our website, and if you're interested in joining these efforts, I look forward to having a conversation with you. Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Rob. I'm so glad we were able to get you back on. Like I said at the outset, we don't claim to be Zoom masters or anything, but you know, we'll make it happen. Okay, so I'm going to try to summarize here a little bit quicker than what maybe I had thought to do. But we've talked about our approach, our governing principles, and a few of the issues that we have weighed on since our inception. We've only been around a relatively short period of time, but already, as Rob said, we've made an impact. We've talked about the fact that we will vet and then endorse candidates for the township race in the fall, and how you can contact us if you're interested in running yourself or interested in supporting strong, reasonable, balanced, and independent thinking candidates. Walter has laid out many of the ways that Township Future can help elect those candidates. And I think that you can see that we're committed to doing that. If you agree with what you've heard so far, we ask you to join us. This is not a polite ask. We need you. We need everybody who is like-minded to stand up and contribute some time, talent, money, or all 3. Those of you who know me know that it's hard for me to ask for assistance, but this election is just that important. You know, for better or worse, this is COVID-19 era, and it gives us more, it gives really all of us an opportunity to be more reflective, to slow down just a bit from our usual hustle bustle, busy lives, to reflect on what's important and what's not so important. You wouldn't be on this Zoom meeting if you didn't think that the Woodlands was important to you and to your family. And we at Township Future hope that that means that you are willing to do something to protect our future. Because make no mistake, we are approaching a crossroads in our future this November. So, you know, I was thinking about how this is new. We're making this up as we go along. We know it's not easy. There's no template for what we're doing, but we at Township Future believe that it is not only doable, but it's worth doing. And I started thinking about JFK's famous speech. You know, the one that he gave in Houston to launch the Apollo NASA space program. I've heard it many times down at the Johnson Space Center, and you probably have too. He said, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and to do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. because that challenge is one we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. Okay, now I know you're probably thinking, well, I'm not saying that electing good candidates to the township board is as consequential as putting a man on the moon. And it definitely won't be as hard as doing that. But we at Township Future do share some of these sentiments. We have a goal. We will organize and bring together the best of our community's energies and skills. We accept this challenge. We cannot postpone the challenge, and we do intend to win. Like the space program, we will commit to doing our very best. However, just like the space program, we need help from you to reach our goal. As you can tell from listening to Walter, there are many, many opportunities to help. Of course, you can run as a candidate, and I would encourage you to contact us and discuss this possibility in greater detail. Or you can suggest other people who would make good, solid candidates. You can volunteer to serve as a campaign manager or a treasurer if there's a candidate that you're particularly aligned with. Township Future will need volunteers to work the early voting polls, and prior to that, to block walk, which is very easy to do. Perhaps you tend to be more into sedentary activities and you'd like to help research significant issues. Perhaps you'd like to meet new people and socialize a bit while addressing envelopes or making telephone calls. Or maybe you have a particular expertise to lend to the efforts in areas like finance, legal, engineering, water issues, communications, organization, driving, technology, almost anything. And of course, little can get done unless we have those who would like to help by writing a check, which would help Township Future to efficiently and cost-effectively assist those endorsed candidates. Some of you, we know, have already done this, and we are thankful to you for these early contributions. You all have many contacts in the Woodlands and can help us to spread the word about Township Future and its activity to your friends, family, associates, and peers. This is one of the most important ways to help, and I am explicitly asking you for your help in any way that you can see fit to contribute to this effort. At this point, we promised you it would be less than an hour, and it is, so point taken. Kira, if you can put the screen up, you can contact any of us through the website or directly, and Kira's going to put the screen up of our personal emails. You've heard from all 5 of us on the steering committee tonight. Feel free to reach out to any one of us to talk further about Township Future, the upcoming elections, or anything about the Woodlands. We're here for you. Okay? Good night, everybody. Thanks.